Hello, I'm Aid from WWF. I've been coming along to NFPtweetup for pretty much 5 years now, so it feels like a long time. It's been fantastic and brilliant, and I've loved every single minute. And in that time, I've heard some stories that were really funny. I've heard some stories that are really poignant. I've heard some stories that were very personal, and I've heard some stories that were very self-indulgent. Tonight, I want to tell you two stories, and they're both personal, and they're both a little bit self-indulgent, so bear with me. I hope you enjoy them. So, the story starts, this part of it starts December 2012, the winter solstice. A friend of mine runs this event in Guildford Town Centre called the River of Lights, where they take little oranges, cut them in half, put candles in them, light them, send them down the river. So you get this beautiful event with amazing lights, and in that bottom right hand corner there's a big column of flame. In that column of flame you write down your wishes for the year ahead on a piece of paper, and you put them in the column of flame and you burn them, and that's your way of saying this is what I want to do. And it's a beautiful event. December 2012, it poured with rain in Guildford, and it's on the river flooded, so they couldn't hold the event. So as an alternative, me and my family had a little one in our garden. We don't have a river in the garden. Well, the last couple of weeks we have, but that's a different thing. So we made a little river of lights. We got little tea lights. My wife's really good at this kind of thing. And lit them and made our little river, and the kids wrote down what they wanted, and we wrote down what we wanted, and we burnt them all in the lights. And I wrote down 2 words on mine. I'm going to tell you at the end of the presentation what those 2 words are. So the main part of the story has 3 characters. The first one's this chap. He's Dan Martin. He's a rider for Team Garmin-Sharp. Now, Garmin-Sharp are one of the top 5 professional cycling teams in the World Tour. So these are guys that are racing at the Tour de France and all those really big bike races. He's 27. He's one of these strange characters that's a combination of really good genes. So his dad and his uncle were both Tour de France cyclists, and incredibly hard work. So he can spend 6 hours pedaling at 28 miles an hour, and then he'll get to the end of that ride and he'll sprint at 40 miles an hour. I don't know about you, but I mean, 6 hours riding, let alone sprinting at the end of it. So this part of the story starts last May. There's a bike race that starts, it's in Belgium, and it starts in a town called Liège, and it goes to another town called Bastogne, and then back to Liège. And it's, I think it's about 170 miles, something like that. So he'd been doing this, and he'd been riding for about 6 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that. And he was in the lead, and he was 500 metres from the end. And he was in the lead alongside a Spaniard called Joaquin Rodriguez. And, you know, there's inches between them. Now try and imagine what the finish of that kind of race is like. There's crowds screaming at you. They're 3-4 deep along the finish line. You're full of adrenaline, you're full of testosterone, you're full of tiredness from all those miles. And you really bloody want to win that race. That's right. So he's riding there, and he's 500 metres from the line, and he really wants to beat this Spaniard. He gets to 350 metres, and for some reason, we don't know why, he doesn't know why, he looks over his shoulder, and and he sees this. It's a 6-foot panda. A 6-foot panda chasing Dan Martin on to the biggest win of his career. So he won by 3 seconds, which is nothing over 6.5 hours. And so the panda turned into this team's lucky charm. He was their mascot. Let's see where this is going. So the next character in our story is this chap. He's called Jonathan Waters. He used to be a professional cyclist. He now runs the team. So he's incredibly charismatic. He's an excellent leader. He's very funny. I mean, think of kind of, you know, Sir Alex Ferguson meets Magnus Magnusson. He's a clever guy. He's really smart. He used to be a doper. You know, he sort of came out recently. He used to take performance-enhancing drugs, but he's done his time. He's a very, very loud voice in the anti-doping movement, so he's one of the good guys. He's also a really snappy dresser. And he loves Twitter. He's got about 75,000 followers. And he tweets a lot. And the third character in this story is me, in the middle. Now, anyone that follows me on Twitter will know that I love cycling. So, there's three things I'm into. Charity, obviously. Digital. You know, I've been the head of digital at WWF for 5.5 years, and then I'm now in the digital team at WWF International for the last couple of years. And my career has been digital. I've been doing digital since 1995. And I love cycling. So that's kind of me. So, cut to the 7th of July last year. Dan Martin, here on the right, skinny guy. He is on stage 9 of the Tour de France, biggest bike race in the world. And he's about 35 kilometres from the end, and he's out on his own. He's on a solo breakaway, which is really unusual. And about 35 kilometres from the end, I'm sitting at home watching it on my telly, my lounge. I've got my laptop open, because I like digital, and I happen to have TweetDeck open, and I see Jonathan Waters, the team boss, tweet. We need a panda now. Anyone, panda? Hurry the F up with the panda. I'm so glad he didn't write it out in full there, because it would have made my presentation so much harder to put together. And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, I can't let this go. Now, because I'm in the digital team for WWF International, I've got the keys to the main WWF Twitter account, the one that's just WWF and has 1.3 million followers. So... what else are you going to do? So Jonathan, bless him, JV, went nuts. He retweeted it. And Dan went on to win the stage, which is very unusual, especially because Sky are just totally dominating cycling at the moment. So to have someone that wasn't from Team Sky sort of do this massive win is just fantastic. And it was just fantastic. It was lovely. It was a loving. It was, you know, we had hilarity ensuing. People suggesting new teams, Team Garmin-Sharp Panda, which I've actually used as presentation titles since then. But all kinds of things like this. People just going, this is amazing, this is awesome. So it did quite a lot of good for WWF on Twitter that day. I had the people who do some of our supporter care stuff sort of coming to me going, do you know all this is happening? It's like, yeah, I kind of caused it. And then other people were suggesting a really clever partnership, selling shirts or jerseys with Panda on them. Automatic win. Yes. And I mean, don't worry about the most of it, but now I follow WWF, so we've reached into this cycling world. So WWF, you know, WWF and cycling fits together really nicely. You know, people that love the outdoors, people that love cycling rather than driving their cars. It's a really good fit for us. And this one's really interesting. I hope they're not only following mentions of pandas, but also bike aficionados. Yeah. I did reply to that one and say, yeah, no, it's cool, we're not just cynical. And other people suggesting stuff. I love this one as well. In case the people at the back couldn't see it, I made it bigger. So this one's the important one. This is the boss. This is the guy who cuts a check to the team to fund them along with their sponsors, Doug Ellis, rich chap based in New York. JB, we've got to get this on the kit for next year. I saw this, I was like, yes. And so Jonathan comes out and says, if you guys are interested in any sort of partnership, I think it'd be a home run. So that was kind of the end of the sort of formal bit. And you know, some other journalists had seen it as well, so I made a future note. You know, these are journalists that are interested and kind of excited at it. And they're generating their own hashtags as well, Panda Power. Love Panda Power. We've used it since. So that's kind of when the conversation went to DMs to start with. So I started DMing Jonathan, and we exchanged email addresses, and then, you know, a miracle occurred. 6 months hard work later, we get a panda on the jersey. I've got one. Unlike the chap from the insurance company, I'm afraid I can't give this one away. It's one of the very few that are signed by every single member of the cycling team, so it's worth an absolute fortune. So we'll be auctioning this off So if anyone wants to bid for it, sorry? Not in polite circles. So you kind of go, well, tick, job done, excellent, pandas on the jersey. We can sit back and relax. And let's think about those three things that make my heart sing. So charity, digital, and cycling. They've all come together. Awesome! My Venn diagram of awesome, which I hope wins me that Rafa back. So I had a good day in the office that day. So what? We've got our panda on the jersey. We need to do something with it. We can't just say, oh yeah, sit back on our laurels, we've got a panda, and kind of what we're going to do with it. So we had some, we kind of sat down and thought about, actually, what are we going to do with this? We've got this whole new audience, we've got a lot of goodwill, had no negative feedback whatsoever. So, primarily we want to get awareness, so we want to reach into this new audience and make them fans of WWF. Not just fans of pandas, but fans of WWF. We're known for our panda, but as an organisation we do so much more. The panda's an icon, the panda's a figurehead, but we work across sustainability, we work across carbon footprints, we work on habitats, oceans, the whole gamut, everything that keeps our natural world beautiful. So we need to get people realising that WWF means that stuff, not just about cuddly animals. We want to have active fans. So we want people who will put their hand up and say, okay, I'm going to join that group, I'm going to follow that Twitter account, I'm going to do something that gets me further engaged with WWF, whether that's signing up to a newsletter, something that means we can communicate with them. And then finally fundraising. So fundraising is very much third on that list. It's not a big priority for us. It's there because we definitely want to do it, and it's a great way of getting people involved, but it's not the top priority this year. So why did it work? If I say so myself. I think it was quite funny. It was quick. I mean, I think I replied within 2 minutes of JV's original tweet. I think there was one other reply before me. So anyone that looked at that conversation, they saw me. And I think if it had been a day later with having triplicate sign-off, it just would have fallen flat on its face. And believe me, for WWF, that isn't beyond the realms of possibility. It was timely. It was a live event. So this is something that's going on at the moment. So very relevant for, if you're involved through your charities in any TV programs. Often we're lucky enough to be involved with live TV as charities. Have you got someone there who's manning your main Twitter account, who's going to be following up on these kind of serendipitous opportunities? It was surprising. No one expected WWF to be tweeting at Jonathan Waters, least of all me 2 minutes before it happened. And it was relevant. We managed to follow up in a way that showed that I wasn't just cynically following the word panda and tweeting anyone with lots of followers. And the background to this, we'd actually had an involvement with the Tour de France team, Sky, a couple of years previous, so we have a bit of history. That was authentic. Again, the conversation revealed that later on. And this is what I was saying, it's about that authenticity, it's about not just, talking about things that don't really involve you, that you're not quite sure about. Luckily enough, I know cycling, a cyclist for 20 years, so I know the people involved as well. And Kirsty will love this, I captured it all. I'm so glad I did this. Whoever it was said that Storify is the old good stuff, and it's like absolutely right. I love Storify. So I think it was within 24 hours I'd sat down and grabbed all the favourite tweets and chucked them in a Storify. And didn't do anything with it, but I just had it because tweets are ephemeral. Tweets disappear. And this is how you capture it and maintain the context so that you can see what kind of order things happened in. And you can build up the story. So, I managed to put a little paragraph to introduce it, and then a couple of little comments throughout. And then also put in things like one of the bike bloggers had done a little blog post about that day's tweets, the Tour de France tweets of that day. And we got mentioned in it. So that's in there as well. But just to have that as a resource, even if it's not kind of actively working for you, it's a really good library. So, big fan of Storify. And it's had 44,000 views so far. And a lot of that came because it was embedded in a news article in the French sports newspaper website, L'Equipe. For those of you that aren't cyclists, I should give a little bit of context here. L'Equipe and cycling have an ancient history. Who's heard of the yellow jersey? The cyclists wearing the yellow jersey, that's the big famous symbol. The yellow jersey is yellow because that's the colour paper L'Équipe was printed on, and they were the first sponsor of the Tour de France. So seeing my face and my name in the pages of L'Équipe, big bucket list moment for me then. My dad's a complete francophile, so I managed to send, I sent this to my dad and just said, look, I'm in L'Équipe. He responded, chapeau. And there was another side effect. So this was a couple of months ago. I was in our headquarters with the rest of my communications colleagues. And a chap from a PR company who runs this thing called Diplomacy had been giving a presentation. And our Director General had been in the audience. Our Director General, Jim Leap, he's got a Twitter account which he uses every so often. And he was watching this, and they were talking about how these big international organisations, how they do what they do on Twitter and how they compare, and they were ranked and everything. And that was all great, and Jim loved it. And we had a little drink afterwards in one of the meeting rooms. And my boss had been talking to Jim, and he'd explained the story of how I'd got in touch with Garmin-Sharp. And Jim, bless him, said, see, I kind of thought it was all about numbers, but now I realise it's about opportunities, and it's about being able to take advantage of them when they arise. It's not just about reach, it's not about cost per thousand acquisition. It's that one thing that triggers off something unexpected, and I guess that's why I wanted to just really reinforce that a lot of people talk about Twitter numbers. And Steve made an interesting point earlier about having not a huge amount of followers, and I don't think it really matters as long as you create opportunities with the followers that you have. So we wanted to give people things that they can do. If you tell people about something but you don't give them a way to make a positive difference, then they feel a little bit disenfranchised. So we came up with this concept of the panda peloton. So for those that don't know, the peloton is the big group of cyclists in a race. You have sort of 200 cyclists in a big lump because of aerodynamics. So when you hear them referring to the peloton, that's the big group. So we wanted to create the panda peloton. How do we get our fans joining together to form a movement? So we create the panda peloton. We're still kind of figuring out what this means, but the first thing we've done is create a Twitter account for it. This is the only joint communication at the moment. So this Twitter account, the Argyle Panda, which is me. And in the bio, it does actually say tweets by Aid, WWF. So this is where we talk about those overlapping circles of WWF's work and professional cycling, or cycling generally. And I also use it as an excuse to talk about bikes during my day job, which is, and then I also retweet main WWF account stuff and retweet Earth Hour, which is coming up at the end of the month. And a lot of my stuff is quite, a lot of the Argyle Panda stuff at the moment is quite fluffy. And it's very much about cycling because I'm building engagement, building an audience, and almost buying permission into that community that I then put my little WWF messages in. What else is the peloton? It's fundraising events. So this is a no-brainer. We heard about the British Heart Foundation earlier, encouraging people to take part in fundraising events and think, well, who am I going to do this for? I'm going to do it for WWF because I know WWF have involvement in cycling now. It's a really good fit and it's front of mind. So we just had our first progress with this actually, where there's a big fundraising ride in Canada, and they said, we saw, you're doing this stuff, and there's a Canadian rider on the team. We'd love it if you could get the Argyle Panda along to the fundraising event. It's like, well, I'm not sure my carbon budget stretches to flying to Vancouver, but I'm sure we can find someone. So they're now in deep talks with WWF Canada about doing something there. And we've got our big landing page. So we've got a little logo lock-up with the URL. So on the sides of their trucks and cars and any other materials, it's all pushing people through to something that, again, gives context to this partnership. So this is where we talk about where it came from, what we're doing with it, and other ways to get involved. We'll be selling stuff. We're doing some joint logoed merchandise and jerseys and that kind of stuff. And then the other thing was, there's 29 riders in the team. And these are all young guys. They're all quite heavy users of social media. So, what can they do? Well, first and foremost, getting those guys tweeting and telling their fans. David Miller, who's somewhere in there, He was in Team GB a couple of years ago. And he's got like 700,000 followers on Twitter. He's a really big deal in social media. Clever guy, funny guy. So getting him talking about some of our stuff as well is a massive opportunity. You know, you take Stephen Fry's, David Miller, and also getting them thinking about WWF when they're interviewed. So I was really lucky. I've talked to a couple of people about this. But a couple of weeks ago, I was lucky enough to be invited out to their training camp in Mallorca, where all 30 of the riders get together, 29 of the riders get together, and do their training rides together. And then in the evening, they eat their meal and they have presentations from sponsors. And I had a little slot where I could talk to them and say, okay, this is what WWF do, this is what I'd love you to do, and just get some thoughts. Hang out with my heroes. But what we also did, I had to take a lot of luggage with me, even though I was only there for 2 nights, because I took a panda suit. That wasn't me in the panda suit, by the way. It was one of the team mechanics, who was very panda-shaped, by the way. There was no padding in that suit. So they had the big official photos on the beach outside the hotel in Mallorca. And they said, oh, can we get the panda along? So, yeah. So we had the panda on the beach, and all the riders loved it, and they were having little photos taken with him that they could tweet to their fans. And he was also in the big official photo as well, where they're all lined up. And then there was this magical moment where David Miller just was playing with Alan the panda and just took him for a stroll down the beach. I had my camera in my hand, so I took some photos. And that's one of the most retweeted pictures that I think I've ever posted ever. Again, reaching out to new audiences with WWF. I also took the opportunity to do some interviews. So we got some pieces to camera, the guys talking about what the panda means to them. You know, which we haven't used yet, but we're going to use them when we've got an ask to attach it to. And then finally, we just had some fun with it. So we went to the hotel gym and sort of very much playing off that original photo. We had the panda on a treadmill and Dan on his bike. And there's a video that we're going to publish again, probably in a month or so, which puts all this together. We're still trying to find the right soundtrack. We really wanted to use Eye of the Tiger, but it costs so much. So bringing my story to a close, what were the 2 words I wrote down on that piece of paper that went up in smoke a few months before all this kicked off? Bike job. Bringing together cycling and my day job, and I think I've made that happen. I just want to finish, not with my words, but with the words of one of the riders.
My name is Alex Hattis. I'm here with Garmin-Sharp, and on their behalf and on my behalf, I would like to thank you for your work, your hard efforts, and keep it up. You know, you're doing great things for everybody.
Thanks a lot.